So hello and welcome to everyone to today's TAFE Talk sessions on the evolution of digital credentials with MyEquals. My name is Lyndall Manson. I'm the Director of Governance, Policy and Projects at TAFE Directors Australia, and I will be facilitating the TAFE Talk session today. Before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we meet today, right across Australia. I'm in Melbourne, which is on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and to any First Nations peoples who are with us here today. If you would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon you are currently on, please feel free to do so in the chat. So today we are joined by one of TDA's valued corporate affiliates, MyEquals, to talk about the evolution of digital credentials and the MyEquals platform. So if you haven't heard of it before, MyEquals is Australia and New Zealand's official tertiary credentials platform for universities, TAFEs and tertiary education providers. All of Australia and New Zealand's universities use the platform, and now over half of Australian TAFEs have joined it too, with the majority already live and servicing students, and some currently in the implementation phase and due to go live this year. So joining us today to tell us all a bit more about how it works, we have Daniel Hibbert, who is the Director for Asia Pacific at Digitree by Parchment. Over the past decade, Daniel has worked collaboratively with schools, vocational education and higher education providers all over the world to develop and deliver digital solutions that both assist institutions administratively while also empowering learners throughout their lifelong learning journey. So welcome to Daniel, and a really big thank you to MyEquals for your support for today's TAFE Talk session. Joining Daniel, we have representatives from 3 TAFEs, which are at different stages of their journey in terms of digitising their credentials. I would like to introduce, firstly, Matt Ryan, who is the Awards and Programs Manager at Canberra Institute of Technology. So I think CIT was the first TAFE to join the MyEquals platform in 2019, going live in April 2020. And CIT has since issued over 70,000 documents to 34,000 recipients. So welcome, Matt. We are also joined by Michelle Pears-Kirkland, who is the Executive Director of the Student Journey Transformation Program at Bendigo Kangan Institute. So Bendigo Kangan have been live on the platform for about a year now, and Michelle will be talking to us a bit about why they joined and the benefits that digital credentials are bringing to Bendigo Kangan and to their students. And finally, we are joined by Steve Voudouris, who is the Registrar at Holmes Glen Institute in Victoria. And Holmes Glen is planning to go live on the platform later this year. So welcome to you, Steve. In terms of the format for today, we will hear from all of our speakers first, and then we'll open up the floor at the end for a Q&A session with our audience. If you have any questions for our speakers today, it would be appreciated if you could put them into the Q&A box. It just helps us keep track of them a little bit better. Just so everyone is aware, today's session is being recorded, and both the recording and the slides used by our presenters today will be made available to everyone who registered for this TAFE Talk session, and will also be made available on the TDA website. And please note that closed captioning is available for this event. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Daniel Hibbert to talk to us a bit more about MyEquals and the evolution of digital credentials. So over to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Lyndall, and afternoon, everybody. Just going to put this into presentation mode. I'll go through a few slides. And also thanks to my colleagues here that have joined us on the webinar today from the 3 respective TAFEs. So to start off, I'm just going to do a little bit of a potted history of MyEquals, where it is today, and part of that evolutionary journey as indicated. So firstly, you'll notice a couple of logos in the bottom left, HES, Higher Ed Services, and Digitree by Parchment. So I represent Digitree by Parchment, and we're the technology providers of the MyEquals platform. And we work in conjunction, collaboration and management of My Equals with HES, HES being the professional services arm of Universities Australia. And in that conjunction, we are delivering My Equals to the participants and to the sector. In terms of where My Equals came from, My Equals is an Australian and New Zealand initiative. It was actually born out of what is known as the Groningen Declaration Network, Groningen being in the Netherlands. And as you can see, the Groningen Declaration Network is an international not-for-profit voluntary network that supports academic and professional digital credential mobility. In essence, making sure that citizens worldwide are able to consult and share their authentic educational data with whomever they want, whenever, wherever. And as part of that network, there's, I think, now approximately 100 signatories worldwide that are all about making digital credentials available and ensuring that learners are able to be mobile with their credentials, be recognised for what they've earned. They do a number of other initiatives, such as ensuring that those that have come from displaced regions or the like have their credentials available and can share them in a verifiable means. But as a bit of a backdrop in terms of where My Equals came from, as part of the Groningen Declaration Network, an initiative and part of the signatory group, Universities Australia and Universities New Zealand became signatories to that network. And as a result of that, one of the programs of work that came from that was the Digital Student Data Initiative. As a result of that, Universities Australia, Universities New Zealand came together under what was known as the Digital Student Data Initiative to generate what became My Equals. HES Hired Services were identified as the managing entity, and ourselves, Digitry, were the technology partners. Digitry as an organisation had been around for some time, based originally out of Ireland, but did have presence in Australia already, with ANU already issuing their credentials through the Digitry platform. Digitry were also one of the original signatories of the Groningen Declaration Network, as is our wider Parchment organisation, which we are part of as well. But from that became My Equals, and as a result, 47 public universities across Australia and New Zealand joined together to create what was known as the My Equals network. In terms of where we stand today, that invitation then went out to other tertiary education providers to join. Now we sit at 78 providers across Australia and New Zealand that are either live or, as Lyndall referenced, are about to go live onto the platform. Just under 2.5 million learners across Australia and New Zealand now have a My Equals account. They have their issued certified credential documents, digital badges, whatever recognition needs to take place through My Equals. The middle column is about then what learners have done with those documents and badges. It's been shared and verified in over 135 countries, and over 6.5 million learner records have been shared, indicating that learners through My Equals are actively sharing their credential documents and their awarded badges. It's trusted by the higher education, tertiary education sector, should I say, because it's actually governed and operated by the sector. And actually, Michelle will probably reference a little bit later about the involvement in terms of the operations committee and the steering committee of My Equals, of which representatives from the institution sit. And finally, just on 9 million academic records have been issued through the platform. So by way of a little bit of a time series of that, the blue line there is the number of learner accounts, which associates to the right-hand side axis, and the pink area chart the number of credential documents that have been awarded onto My Equals, referencing the left-hand side axis. So My Equals was officially launched in April 2017, and that's Professor Margaret Gardner and her role as Chair of Universities Australia at the time, launching at the annual general meeting for the Groningen Declaration Network in Melbourne, and that coincided with the University of Auckland going live. Over the course of 2017 and 2018, a big program of work was done to actually get all of the respective universities live onto the platform and available to be issuing their credential documents, that being testamenters, transcripts, and AHEG documents, and for the dual sector institutions, their statement of attainments. From then on, the invitation went out to other tertiary education providers to join, and Canberra IT were the first non-public university to join at the end of 2019 and issuing from April 2020 onwards. In mid-2020, we introduced digital badges into the platform, and this was actually a sector request to have digital badges for the recognition of micro-credential short courses, non-formal learning to be issued through MyEquals, such that a learner would have a holistic learner account of all their earned credentials and qualifications. In around about mid-2021, the Gordon joined MyEquals as well. And from then, we've had Bendigo Kangan, Melbourne Poly, Holmes Glen Chisholm, Sunny TAFE, Wodonga TAFE, and more recently, TAFE Gippsland, William Angliss, and TAFE South Australia have joined. So a very strong TAFE network has joined in what has been the last couple of years onto MyEquals. That is a full list of all the institutions that are now on or implementing MyEquals, and will be awarding all their students and graduates with their credential documents, their digital badges officially. And one of the things that you'll see there is that it's governed and operated by those participating ANZ education providers. And that is one of the core components of what MyEquals is. It is a sector-generated platform, and all the developments, the roadmap is coming from the sector in terms of what they want to see and do. And what ultimately it's going to do is enable learners with anytime, anywhere access to their official certified credentials and digital badges that they can share as they wish. So how that works, ultimately there is a trust triangle. At the top of that is the education provider. So what we do is we set up each education provider with their own MyEquals instance. We can configure an environment that is purpose-built for that institution by way of the documents that you wish to issue and the digital badges that you wish to configure. A lot of work has gone into setting up that instance, and that will enable the institution to have control of the digital certification and issuance of those credentials to the learner. The learner has then an activated learner account, which they have all their awarded documents and badges in specifically to them, and they are then in control of sharing those. So ultimately, the platform has been built with learner centricity in mind, and making sure the learner is the heart of the platform, and they will have the ability to share as they need. And through that, as they share it to verifying parties such as employers, professional associations, education institutions as part of applications, it's been able to be verified through the platform as to who the awarding body of that document was. As you can see in a little bit more detail, the documents are signed via cryptographic e-signature, and this validates the source of the document coming from that institution. Learners, once they're issued their credentials, are able to have read-only access to those. They cannot modify or change any of the documents or badges that have been awarded to them, but they can view them and they can share them as needed. There's also control and regulation for both an institution and for a learner. Institutions are able to ensure that they are managing those documents. If there are issues with the document, let's say a transcript has been issued with some erroneous grades, the institution has the ability to revoke and replace those documents. Learners are able to share those, and they are able to see what happens to those documents as they share them. Are employers viewing them? Are they processing them? So there's a lot more control in terms of the platform being in a digital environment. And ultimately, that last point is what the institutions originally all came together on. The learners maintain access forever. And what they can do is they continue on for further studies or further qualifications at other institutions. They're able to collate and unify their accounts such that they have a full record of learning for life. As a quick snapshot of what the platform looks like, and this is a demo environment that you can see, or snapshots from demo environment, learners will have all their awarded documents. In the case here, there's a transcript that's been awarded to a learner, and also they are able to collate all their digital badges as well. A full quantum of all those documents and badges helps them, in many regards, to create that record of learning for life. One of the more recent initiatives that we've brought in or features into the platform is what we call a curated learner profile. So with all those documents, those badges have been awarded to the individual, they're actually able to now curate a profile of themselves and present that as part of an application. And this is a move that we're seeing as a bit of a trend right around the world. In terms of the ease of how individuals access their documents and share them through the platform, they're actually able to share it to a number of organizations quite directly. You can see the example here where if applying to RMIT University, for example, an individual could share their verified documents directly through the platform as part of an application. There are other organizations and professional associations out there that will actually request a MyEquals shared document or digital badge. An example of that is the Seek Certsy platform. So as part of applying for jobs, Seek have a Certsy platform, which is certifying different credentials such as police checks, working with children checks, driver's license, etc. And when it comes to Australian education qualifications, one of the components that they request is a My Equals shareable link. In terms of participation, and I go back a little bit to the governance of the My Equals platform, there is an operations committee and there's a steering committee. And the steering committee is made up of about 5 to 6 representatives that sit at currently at the DVC level of the universities, and we're expanding that out for greater TAFE participation. But ultimately, they set the criteria as to who can participate. And you can see what the criteria is there. In effect, it's accredited institutions in the tertiary education sector across Australia and New Zealand. And that's really important to the platform in terms of the assurance of its trust and what documents and badges are being issued from the platform. And what we've seen across that is that ultimately it is a sector-generated platform. It's a sector initiative, and as a result of that, the ability for TAFEs to join has been a very important step in towards that. And I'd also like at this opportunity to actually thank TDA, who have been a great affiliate partner as well. We've done a lot of work to actually supporting the platform, and obviously a number of the TAFEs that have subsequently joined as we've gone through just now. Lyndall, I might hand over back to you if that's okay.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was a really great overview. And I think that's a really important point that you make about the governance. It's a sector-generated platform, and it's also governed by the sector. So, yeah, no, really interesting. So I'd now like to hand it over to Matt Ryan from the Canberra Institute of Technology to share your experience using the My Equals platform. So over to you, Matt.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to share this. I'd like to start by giving you a bit of an overview of the implementation journey we went on. We commenced in 2018, I think, reaching out to HES and setting up the sort of project. The main aim really was streamlining issuing certification, and really wanted to move away from posting out documents through Australia Post. That in itself was costing about $30,000 a year, if I'm guessing, something along those lines. And then there's also staff costs of printing, filling envelopes, addressing envelopes, and then just sending them off to the letterboxes of the recipients. So just at that stage, that was the main intention. As the project proceeded through 2019, we always intended that the project would be integrating with our student information management system. So it was a bit of a long-winded project in that sense, and that's largely because it was conflicting with some of the projects we had concurrently running. And the major one was a massive upgrade of Banner, which is our student information management system. We moved from Banner 8 to Banner 9, which basically meant a complete rewrite of all the Java forms in the browser, to converting those to browser-based pages. That was our IT tied up pretty well consistently for that time. So it took a bit longer than we expected, and I think that was all purely our side as we sort of did the work to integrate with our system. So as we sort of progressed into 2020, we basically wrapped up most of the deployment. That was pretty well underway. We were probably just at the sort of fine-tuning and absolutely perfecting our communication strategy and all that sort of thing that you do with these projects. And then March 2020, we had to hit the first lockdown through the COVID, and we were then suddenly sort of frantically setting up work from home systems and sort of closing the campuses and all that sort of thing. And with a bit of extra push, we were able to sort of get My Equals up and running in April 6, 2020. So that was basically essential in us surviving that sort of whole process at the time. We could then service students without having to access the campus. So we were just really quite fortunate that the project had got as far as it did at that time, because that's what got us through those few years. As I think you mentioned the figures, since that time we've issued documents to about 35,000 recipients. It's about 70,000 documents. It's been running quite well since then. I'll just give a bit of an idea over what was actually implemented. So as I mentioned, it is an integrated system. We issue 3 types of documents in terms of our My Equals documents. So these are modeled on the My Equals university defaults where their testimonies, their transcripts. I think universities usually issue higher education graduate statements. We basically sort of adapted those. So we do testimonies, we do transcripts, which are our statements of attainment or record of results, and they have subtypes of those. And then the third type is what we call supplementary completion documents, and that's any other associated document that people might need. So it might be trade papers, letters for professional bodies, keyboard statements, whatever that might be. So that's, yeah, that document's basically issued to the people, to our students as needed. And as mentioned before, it's an integrated system. So we implemented a process where the documents are pushed from Banner to the MyEquals repository. So my team will generate transcripts and testaments, etc., from the Banner page. They basically select to run the MyEquals output option, and that will generate a PDF document and a JSON document, which is the metadata, which defines what the document actually is for, and it stores these files to a holding table. I think the PDF stuff will be interesting when Steve gets on board to talk about their implementation of Homesley, because I think they're taking a different route, so that could be useful to consider then. The holding table is stored locally. You have a process we run 6 times a day, and that pushes them to the MyEquals repository. And the staff then log on to basically the repository, and they can view the documents there and process them accordingly. So because we do issue qualifications that got holds on them, so we will sort of check for that, and also, just review whatever sort of physical checks we want to make out of a document before we then certify them. So the process is we generate the document, we push it to MyEquals, we then review the document on that system, and then they are certified as required or held back. There was a step before certifying, which is using the information we got there. So whatever we decide we need to do with the document, we pre-email students by using a CRM. Basically, we sort of push. It's basically a pre-MyEquals email that we send to them, and that will either give them the information they're going to need to find the MyEquals email and what to do with the information on it. Any other document that we're not certifying for reasons of hold or whatever reason that may be, we send another email to basically explain what they need to do to address their records. But once a document is certified, once the staff are happy with it, they can do that at quite a bulk process, and that then generates the MyEquals email, which has all this sort of registration information too. But they need to set up their system. Yeah, I think just going to explain a bit more of the letters, but it's basically just they get 2 emails from us. They get one from us to explain what they're going to get, what they might need to do with it, and they get a second one from MyEquals, which actually has the process to log into their system. The system we set up, it's the authentication system that students use. What we set up is an identity provider system, which we use as Elysian Ethos, which is part of the Elysian platform. And what happens there is that when the students click on the link to register, they're basically presented with a CIT interface, and they use their CIT credentials to access their MyEquals document. So that once they do that step, they get onto the system. They can then establish their MyEquals account, but the first step is to sort of register through CIT to manage the identity and authentication of their account in the first instance. There's other processes in the MyEquals world to do that. So I think you can use things like like emails or the other process, but we chose that one because we weren't happy with the email information that we had about our students, because there are some instances where people might either share email addresses or they use a family email address or that sort of thing. So we just really wanted to use something where we were sort of confident that the CIT student was the person accessing these emails and not someone else just sharing that email address. So yes, that's sort of one of the implementation considerations that I think was important to us. In terms of how we operate, I just want to give a couple of observations about how that whole process has been running. Part of our experience is that we find that a lot of our students, a lot of the documents you issue are the people who are only doing very short courses. So they might do the construction induction or asbestos awareness or those sorts of courses where they're here for a very short time and they don't really engage with CIT systems or really get an awareness of their IDs or any of that sort of thing. So we did need to sort of have a communication strategy, including that sort of email that we send before the My Equals email, just to make sure that people actually get the information they need to access the system, because it's quite different cohorts to people who spend many years in their institution. It's quite a different sort of different body of students. Another thing that helped with us is the ability to bulk share emails with institutions. So where we have college, especially senior school students or college students who might come and do a white card course at CIT, we find being able to share back that class loads documents back to the school has been quite helpful, because the school can then help those people go through the process of applying for the actual white card with the licensing body or those sorts of things. So that's the bulk sharing tool has been quite useful. And I guess the other thing I'll talk about CITs is that we issue My Equals by default. We don't issue paper copies. Students can ask for them, they have to opt in. We don't charge for them, but they do need to request it. The only cohorts we do hard copies for are people where we tend to have trouble, but they still have trouble getting them accepted by the body. So one example is Arctic, which is the air conditioning, refrigeration professional body, who's to actually want to get a sort of nice shiny bit of paper from their applicants before they issue their licenses. So I know there's digital. I know the in the HES My Equals space there is various projects and various means of sort of trying to get this more broadly accepted. So that's probably one of the areas to sort of focus on, I think, for just getting these documents accepted for the students. So paper copies are there if we need them. And I guess the other thing I would say about My Equals is we are able to issue documents for past students for previously issued paper copies. So if you're on a better system and you apply for it, we can reissue your qualification on My Equals, and that's been taken up reasonably, reasonably popular, for a bit of word, service that we provide with that. So like I mentioned about this, the pickup rate's been pretty good. I think most. I'm going to run a survey quite shortly, and it's going to be basically just across the whole My Equals recipients to see how how it's been accepted by our cohorts. But I think generally we haven't we certainly don't get many complaints about it, and so it does seem to be generally well accepted that the digital qualification is a great advantage. So I'll stop there. And
thanks, Matt. That was really good. There were some really useful insights there about how CIT has been using the platform. I mean, when you think back to the days when you were paying, for postage and you had staff printing out certificates and putting them in envelopes to send them off to addresses of people that don't live at that address anymore, it's crazy, really. You also talked about some of the communication strategies for the different cohorts of students, especially those doing short courses, but also emailing from CIT before they hear from My Equals, the bulk sharing tool, and the fact that you can issue digital credentials to past students as well. So it would be interesting to see your survey results as well of all of your My Equals recipients. So thanks for those insights, Matt. Really appreciate it. I'd now like to turn to Michelle Payers-Kirkland from Bendigo Kangan Institute, and you're going to provide some reflections on your My Equals journey over the past 12 months or so. So over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Lyndall. I will just share my screen. And I promise I'm not doing death by PowerPoint. I have one slide for you all today. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to everyone who's joined us today, and to TDA and Digitree for the invitation. So as has been mentioned, BKI has been live with My Equals for a little over 12 months now. offering 3 of our most utilised completion documentations, similarly to CIT, which is our statement of results, our statement of attainments, and our award qualifications or testaments. We had a number of different drivers for going down this path. And first one really was around the student experience. And based off a number of complaints we were receiving around not being able to get their finalisation document in time to get a promotion, join a professional body that was required for accreditation purposes to start in that particular profession, pay rises and university entry, those sorts of things, because of the time it was taking to sort of print, pack it up, post it out, get it out to the student. And in fact, you know, we saw the benefit on day one. We had a soft launch a couple of days before the official launch, and we had a student who had applied for university entry. It was an international student, so needed a COE for their visa to be able to stay in Australia. And we were able to issue that documentation. It was one of the first ones we issued through the system within the hour. So we felt particularly lucky that we were able to see the benefits there so quickly. You know, again, similarly to Matt, in Victoria in particular, we had challenges during lockdowns for COVID, and being able to get people into the office to be able to do what was necessary to issue those qualifications out to our students. So we felt the staff experience was important for us as well, and to improve that, to not have someone stand at a printer for hours on end, printing out different pieces of documentation. We also looked at through a bit of a regulatory lens as well, and how we were tracking against sort of our vet funding contracts and our ASQA provider standards around getting things out within the 30-day time period, etc. And the other area we considered, or the second last area we considered, was around the security, because we were starting to see some fraudulent certificates, or what we thought were fraudulent certificates, come through for verification that were quite old. And the last one was financial driver as well. The costs of everything was starting to go up at that point, around sort of the consumables, the printing, postage, etc. So those were the drivers for us for going on this journey. We had a slightly different implementation path to both CIT and to what Holmes Glen are going through at the moment. We adopted the light integration approach, and that was predominantly because we were mid-flight of implementation of a new student management system. But we felt it was worth the initial investment with the light integration with our then SMS, which was Banner. And we simply produced 2 files, which is the metadata and PDF file Matt spoke of earlier. And those are manually uploaded into the system. So it's very quick, it's very straightforward for our team who undertakes that activity to get that up into the system and then go through the certification process. We had a 6-week end-to-end implementation, which I was skeptical about when we started. I have to say that we would make 6 weeks. I thought that was pretty ambitious. Turns out it wasn't, but we were quite lucky. We were supported by Digitree all the way through the process. But also we'd done a substantial amount of work for the new student management system, which went live for us in January of this year. So it was just a matter of aligning the work that had been done with the new SMS around templates, etc., with the work that we were undertaking as part of this project. And I think we are looking at a full integration to our Job Ready Plus SMS in the early part of next year. A couple of, I guess, call outs from the implementation for us was we worked, as I said, closely with Digitree throughout the whole process. But one thing that struck us was that very generous about providing us with marketing material, comms material, training material, etc. But it was very customised towards the university sector, which, you know, we knew it would be because that was the genesis of the product. But they were very open to taking suggestions from us to give it more of a TAFE flavour, and even things around different wording that you would see commonly in the university sector, but you don't see so much in the TAFE sector. And the other, I guess, hot tip on implementation that we found is change management is really important from the outset, and it's not just about the communication. We had a change manager as part of our team from the conception of the project who did a lot of change impact analysis and assessment across our students and various cohorts, a lot of stakeholder engagement, etc. And I think one of the lessons learned as part of that, and it did take us by surprise when we went live, was we had underestimated the rituals around student completions at our local level, so at our teachers and educator level, and the sorts of rituals and ways of celebrating the success of their students. So we actually got quite a lot of pushback from staff, certain members of staff when we went live, saying, well, I need a paper copy for my student. So we had to do quite a bit more work in some areas to bring them along and find different ways and new rituals and different ways of celebrating. And as I said, while it was developed by the universities, TAFE is now represented, sorry, I'll get my words out right, on the operations committee since earlier this year. I'm currently the representative on that, and it's a really good platform for advocacy for TAFE, in particular around the future product roadmap. But also to get a bit of a sneak peek of what's just about to go into release. And again, I've been very welcomed by my university colleagues, which has been great. And they, you know, I think people do recognise that we are same but different. And as I said, it's around the small things like language, etc. But it's been really receptive, and it's been really great being able to play that sort of advocate for TAFE on that operations committee and get that sort of similar flavour and be part of that governance model for the product. I think the other thing, and the reason I put the alignment to the BKI strategic plan there is because this was critical when we were building our business case for funding for the project. And again, a hot tip, align it back to the strategy. It really helps sort of to move the argument ahead for the implementation of the product. And I've just popped up here a couple of the benefits that we have seen since we've been live, which is quite a high adoption rate across our student cohort. So it's just over 80% at the moment of our students who are picking up their qualifications and other documentation from the system. One thing I will mention is we actually run 2 instances of MyEquals because we operate under 2 brands. So one under the Bendigo TAFE brand and one under the the Kangan Institute brand. So the average across both instances is just over 80%. From an end-to-end process perspective, so it's not just the uploading and certifying and the activity in My Equals, I've actually seen a 50% reduction in the time taken to issue a completion qualification, which is a significant saving for us in both financial terms, but also in staff sanity around having to, as I said, stand by that printer and wait for things to come out the other end. And we've also had roughly a 73% reduction in paper reprints and requests for qualification verifications, comparative to the average for 2017 to 2022. We've seen the cost reductions, and we have actually seen a decrease in student complaints around the timelines that they receive their qualifications in. So I'm going to wrap up there and hand back to you, Lyndall.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's really good to hear about the benefits of the platform. I mean, you mentioned obviously the student experience, but there's also the improved security, just the efficiencies achieved and the timeliness for all those reasons that you mentioned, you know, students wanting to share qualifications for promotions or professional or getting into uni. So, and of course the financial drivers. So that was a really great overview. Thank you. I'll now hand over to Steve Vildouris from Holmes Glen Institute, who will share where Holmes Glen are up to on their journey. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Lyndall. I guess I've been invited along to talk about our journey. We're certainly not live like the rest of the folks that are involved in this presentation, but I thought I'd take a second to talk to you guys about the history and how we went through things at Holmes Glen, and basically give you some what I've termed implementation considerations, and I've categorized those into 3 categories, the best way to sum it up. So look, the first time we were introduced to My Equals was as part of the Student Administration Managers Network meeting that we run in Victoria for all the TAFEs, and I believe that was based back in December 2017. So it was a long time ago, and there was a plan at that stage to write a business case and present it basically to the Higher Education Skills Group, as it was at the time, to try and fund this project on behalf of the Victorian TAFEs. HESIG and the sector had certain projects funded previously that were really advantageous for our reporting and recording. And an example of that was the Experian project, a product that we use for address validations. Now, I can go into the number of reasons, but there are a number of reasons why that didn't happen, is the best way to sum it up. It was unfortunate, but we just couldn't find the right people to talk to, and basically trying to get all the people together to write the business case and work out where it needed to go to was really difficult. So I guess from a Holmes Glen perspective, the digital certification or credentialing issue raised its head significantly due to 2 factors. I know at some point in the future we will stop talking about COVID, but COVID was certainly one of the drivers of that. Victoria was sanctioned to significant lockdowns, which came with authorised worker permits and all sorts of restrictions around staff movements and learner movements. And so initially, one of the biggest issues that we sort of had was having to get staff on campus and change the way we did stuff. In our case, awards weren't posted generally. Awards were picked up from only one of our campuses. That in and of itself created problems. Obviously, that created issues with, as I said, staffing and learners. We did pivot fairly quickly to a postage situation, but obviously that increased costs. So one of the factors that I don't talk about here is cost, but cost and cost saving was a significant factor as part of our business case. At the same time that was happening, Holmes Glen was going through, I think, like a lot of other institutes, some significant discussions around the micro-credentialing space and the digital badging space. And so the impetus was basically, how do we get digital credentials and badges to students as soon as we possibly could? So in 2021 and 2022, we basically had presentations from a variety of providers. Obviously, the history around the MyEquals factor was a significant push in that. I did write a business case that went to our data systems and technology advisory group. As Michelle said, it is very, very important to take that back and write it in the concept of your strategic plan and goals of the Institute. And so we had a lot of stuff in our strat plan around HX, or the Homes Lynn experience. And so digitising was an important factor, and it was really, really easy to get that through based on that factor. So again, it was approved then by our Data and ICT Governance Committee. And our business case did include, interestingly, help from Michelle and Matthew. We had some 3 sites that we referenced, and Bendigo, Kangan, Canberra, and the Gordon were our 3 sites. So in our case, we decided to go down an XML API path as opposed to an uploading via CSV or PDF. We had done a lot of work with WSO2 as our API provider. We've done a lot of work integrating various systems using APIs, whether that be Epsilon to our student management system, or our recruitment system to our student management system, and other systems, website, etc. And so basically we decided to go down an XML path, which added some complications, but in the long run will be much better for us, I think, is the best way to sum it up. So we signed our contract, I think, at the end of, or start of November, middle November last year, and we've been on the journey since then. Obviously, we have some shutdown periods for awards, and that has extended our path, but the plan is that we're going to go live around about the 16th of October 2023. So my next couple of slides should be fairly quick, but 3 factors I think are important for consideration if you are looking at doing this. One is the amount of time that you need to take to reflect and change the formats and your templates. Yeah, we had a significant amount of work that had to be done in that. And again, my presentation includes some thank yous for people that work for us. We have a design and digital asset manager who has been fantastic in changing that. The 2 examples that I'll give you, basically our original of our academic transcript and our changed academic transcript. Our original of our academic transcript has a number of factors on it, like copy, do not accept copies, has a nice little hologram. You need that on proper parchment paper. We found that that was really, really important, right? Obviously, in a digital environment, you don't need those factors. So changing stuff was important. Same thing goes for our statement of attainment. We have 3 types of paper. Basically, we have gold for our higher education, silver for our vocational education, and we had blue for our statement of attainment. But obviously, the architecture there on the right-hand side of this ascender created all sorts of problems. So we've decided to change the format of that to match our academic transcript paper. So one thing you can do, you can certainly do before you start the project, is prepare by looking and reviewing your current documentation and formats of those documents. The second thing that we did, which is working really, really well, has been our communication strategy. We sat down with our marketing people, communications manager for marketing, Richard Roach, and we've written an entire communication strategy. Actually, interestingly, the first part of that comm strategy happened yesterday with our Homes Lynn news email that went out talking about introducing MyEquals to our staff and inviting people to join this webinar, basically. So people have been pushed to that. It will start inquiries. It will be part of our strategy. Note, the strategy includes communications not only to our staff, but also to our students and learners, industry partners, and other people in the market who are interested, right? So a well thought out comm strategy is awesome. We're on step 2 of a 25, I think. And so it really ramps up with 6 weeks to go is the best way to sum it up. And finally, we've gone down an API XML path, right? we decided that that was the methodology that we wish to use. Interested that Matthew and the CIT are loading 6 times a day. We will be loading once a day when we go live at 9 p.m. at night. We, unlike the others, will be charging students if they request paper copies or if they request historical documents to be uploaded to the MyEquals site. Lots of work has basically been done by the technical team, who include my awards manager, our information systems management manager and her team, who are the systems developers, and even the enterprise architects in relation to trying to get single sign-on to work for us. Going back to a couple of things that were mentioned by some others, just to follow up, we use and are using students' private emails, not student email, not the homeschooling student email. We decided that it was a preference. We have to collect that and report it for Victoria anyway. Most of the data was, I know we have some shared email situations, but generally pretty good. So we decided to go down that path. And again, as I said to you guys, we're looking at this as some sort of a driver for earning some revenue for the registrar's department in relation to issuance of paper-based qualifications and historic qualifications. I think that's it. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Steve, for sharing those insights. I'm now going to hand back to Daniel, who's going to talk to us a bit more about the future evolution of digital credentials and where to next with all of this. Daniel?
Thanks, Lyndall. Thanks, everyone. And I'll just say, obviously, the 3 institutions you've just heard, they're all at various stages, different ways and approaches to it. So it's been great to work with each of them at their corresponding part of the process. And to that, what I want to do just now is talk a little bit about the evolution. So we've obviously just gone through where MyEquals has come from, what it does today, and obviously in terms of onboarding the respective institutions. So what we do put together is a little bit of a view of how that comes to be. So obviously, quite simply, we start off with a paper physical credential or award document. There's been that move to a digital copy, and invariably you might see this as a PDF issued through a student management system or the like, but this is a non-encrypted and unsecured document. So where we've taken it through in across that journey is towards digital documents, pure digital documents and open badges. And to this, what I would say, one of the things that we've done as a technology partner of those institutions is to try to meet each institution as to where they're at. Some institutions have got very good structured XML data that can render the documents onto the platform. Others have structured PDF documents ready to go. So we've always tried to work with the respective institutions and their respective student management systems as to what's available. But all the while, we're looking at where does the technology path go. And as part of a global provider of digital academic credentials, we're obviously looking as to what does 5 years, 10 years look like down the path. And obviously, our technology has been building up to deliver that, and we are well equipped in terms of the next evolution of that. And we're taking through is to what is known as verifiable credentials. Verifiable credentials are being associated to a decentralized ID such that that individual, or the credential holder, has it issued to them and that they could download it to their respective digital wallets and effectively own their digital ID. A really important part of this is reinforcing learner agency, reinforcing that the learner has control of those documents accordingly. One of our representatives in our organisation, Simone Ravioli, is the Director of Global Ecosystem and Innovation within our organisation. He is also the co-chair of the W3C Verifiable Credentials for Education Task Force, which is a global task force, and W3C is a quite a prominent consortium and standard across that. So what we've been working towards is self-sovereign identity, and that is a lifetime portable identity for any person. And one of the things as part of one of the aspects of that is to being able to issue those credentials in the ways that they've been issued to this date, but also into that SSI format such that it could be downloaded into a digital wallet. And this is some work that we're starting to gather with the respective TAFEs that are on this call today about how to issue some of those industry cards, etc., in this type of format. very quickly, one of the things that we've actually done, and being part of a global organisation, is we actually did earlier at the start of the year a pilot in Ontario, in Canada, under the Virtual Skills Passport. And it was actually issuing micro-credentials into this self-sovereign identity format. One of the things, and again, one of the things we do in our collegiate approach in terms of working with institutions, is to bring some of the findings back. And one of the things I just picked up that Matt referenced before, and one of the things that we've identified throughout MyEquals, is acceptance. So working with institutions and working with the market about what can be accepted. And what we noticed at early days of MyEquals is there's a lot of organizations that were not prepared to accept a digital qualification document. As time progresses, that's quickly eroded, especially during the periods of COVID, where obviously there was a pertinent move to accept digital documents and the like. But there is a market that does need to be educated about what these are and to work out how that is consumed. And part of doing the pilot in Ontario and Canada around SSI technology and these W3C credentials is about how do organizations understand and consume them. So as part of evolution, it's making sure that technology also works with the market about acceptance. And that's one of the things that we actually found throughout that Canadian pilot. And some of those findings we are bringing back to the Australian and New Zealand institutions as we work towards piloting this technology into the early part of 2024. And I will touch on this a little bit in terms of our wider organisation. So the Digitary by Parchment organisation is global. MyEquals is here in Australia and New Zealand. We are also delivering what's known as the MyCreds or MyCertif platform into Canada, and that will cover 273 universities and colleges across Canada. At last count, I think we're about 60 institutions that are now live. We are part of the Parchment group of companies. And in fact, Digitary will be rebranded Parchment in coming months as we amalgamate into that wider organisation. But we service over 5,000 institutions from K-12 schools through to vocational higher education institutions in the US alone. So we are part of a 300-strong staff base. And as part of that, it actually makes sure that we are working at the cutting edge of what the technology is in different countries and jurisdictions around the world. Our Digitary Core platform is also used across the UK, Ireland, India, Spain, Japan, a number of different countries and jurisdictions that actually deliver through the Digitary Core platform as well. And that network also allows us to plug into different types of systems. In China, for example, they've got the CSSD, which is part of the Ministry of Education. So any Chinese national, their credentials are sitting through the Ministry of Education on that central repository, which through our technology is able to be shared into admission teams or application systems here as well. So you can verify international students as well. And that's an important part that MyEquals actually enables, is not only the ability for institutions to issue and service students, but also to help the verification process in terms of your inbound applicants from Australia and New Zealand or through different parts of the world. I'll stop there. Thanks, Lyndall.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's really exciting to see where this is all headed. Just got time for a really quick question or two. We did have one, will credentials be accessible by trusts awarding scholarships for which applicants are required to submit a copy of records? I think the answer is yes to that one, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel. Then another question, you've only got 1 minute though, Daniel, to answer it. You'll have to be crisp. It raises the question of non-nationally recognised vet and higher education qualifications. How are they captured in this?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably I don't have a minute to answer it fully, but ultimately we are working through those recognised qualifications, and we work with the institutions to set that up. Digital badges and non-award often comes up, so we do work with the institutions about what they want to award. The governance committee is there to sit over the top in terms of what actually is coming out of the platform, because we do want that assurance of what is coming out of the platform is recognised accordingly. So there's probably a few layers to answer the question to get to the outcome, but there is, I guess, that ability to make sure that what is on the platform is recognised accordingly. But especially from digital badges, they are quite flexible. They can represent non-award, award, any type of mechanism, as long as that attesting body has certified and issued that credential document or that digital badge out.
Thanks, Daniel. So that brings us to the end of our session today. I'd like to thank Daniel, Matt, Michelle and Steve for your time today and for sharing your experiences. Thanks to everyone who joined in for our TAFE Talks today. We are sharing a few links in the chat now for upcoming TAFE Talk sessions. The next one is on the 13th of September with Adobe on creativity and digital fluency in the generative AI era. TDA is also running an online conference on the 18th of October. It's called Linkages, One Tertiary Education System, which is exploring policy and practice that will strengthen alignment between VET and higher education. So as I said, we've posted details of those links to register in the chat. Thanks again to everyone for joining today, and goodbye for now.